welcome to another edition of Divorce-a-Palooza. Getting divorced is always difficult, but if you're divorcing an alcoholic, it brings up a whole new set of complications and difficulties and emotional issues. And that's what I want to talk about today. Today, we're going to offer tips for those divorcing an alcoholic. My guest is divorce attorney Tiffany Hughes, who, Tiffany, I think we've known each other now for like 5 years.
Yeah. Mhm.
And think so highly of Tiffany. She has her own firm. She's been a divorce attorney for 17 years, something like that.
Close, 13. I'll take it though.
Okay, okay, good. Yeah, I think I aged you a little too much. But Tiffany is experienced. She can litigate. She can help you get divorced through mediation. So she very much is client focused and she's a great listener. And welcome, Tiffany. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's very exciting to be here and obviously collaborating with you as we've done throughout the years. So I'm excited to share some insight with everybody out there that, is going through a divorce and on top of that, has other issues that kind of layer up. And I understand it not only professionally, but also personally. And I think that's important. And I think that I'd like to share my knowledge, and also, things that I personally experienced, that may help others out there. So looking forward to it.
Okay, so tell me about those divorcing an alcoholic. Do you agree with me that there's like this, you're in sort of a different league because it makes it much more tricky and difficult. And the issues that come up are like, are my children going to be safe? Am I going to have to co-parent with this person? An alcoholic might be irrational. So tell me your opinion based on past cases of what it's like for these people to divorce an alcoholic.
So, we could spend a couple hours plus on this topic generally. So to kind of sum it up is you already have a breakdown of a relationship and your romantic relationship with your spouse. But on top of that, you have an issue where the other spouse is an alcoholic. And you have concerns now where you're going to be now transitioning into, one household into two. And what does that mean for the kids? Um, a lot of people don't feel comfortable with leaving their children, rightfully, with the other spouse when the other spouse is an alcoholic. How do you go about proceeding forward with proving it?
Well, that
What
was
does
gonna
this
be my next question. How do you prove it in court? Because there's people who are watching this probably thinking, "Yes, yes, but what do I do? How do I prove it?" Tell me about that.
So I will say that of all of the things that have to be proven or issues that would have to be proven, that alcoholism is actually like fairly easy. Um, there are a series of different tests that can be completed. So like there's random and regularly scheduled alcohol screenings. There's also different tests called PEth tests. There's BAC tests, and there's also SoberLink devices that can be attached to a vehicle. So I've even found out recently that you can do nail testing, like fingernail testing,
Mhm.
as a means to test for all different drugs and alcohol. So there's all different ways of doing it now. And honestly, through those means, you can see, the level of drinking.
Okay, but what about if somebody knows their spouse is an alcoholic? In this article you wrote for Divorce Girl Smiling on this subject, you wrote like that the people should keep police reports, make sure you call the police.
Mhm.
Like, what are some tangible things that people can prove in court to either get custody of their kids or get their ex to take some action to stop drinking, especially when they're with the kids?
Well, as far as what you can do, I mean, obviously, if there's been issues with DUIs or any issues in the home with domestic violence or issues related to the drinking and police reports that, cops that have come to the house, obviously keep those reports. Um, But really from there, I mean, there's really not a whole lot that you can do outside of the court system in that respect. The majority of it is going to be done in the actual case itself, where then I can request that the individual be tested. I can
I
request that there
see.
be overnight parenting, no overnight parenting until the testing has come back to
Okay, so
confirm.
this is what I didn't realize. I thought you were saying that people could implement these tests themselves. You're saying get a
Mhm.
divorce attorney like Tiffany, which, by the way, if you like what you're hearing, thughewslaw.com is Tiffany's website. You can get in touch with her for a consult. But what I'm saying is somebody should go to an attorney, say, I think my kids could be in danger. I don't feel comfortable. And that's when the attorney takes action to implement these tests. But before
Correct.
you do that, Tiffany's saying save every report of like a DUI. If you had to call the police for something, maybe, Tiffany, do you believe in journaling? Like somebody should
I
keep
was
a
just going to say that.
journal and then you have a whole,
Yeah.
oh, you were just going to say that. Okay, tell me
Yep.
what you think.
So keep track of the drinking. I would actually make a journal of like he or she came home at this time, was intoxicated, started to get into a verbal argument in front of the children, blah blah blah. Like actually journal the activities. And so there can be a timeline and a history of it. Yes, it would be your word against the other person's word, but it at least shows like there's been some kind of issue and you have some kind of tangible evidence outside of court.
I think that is such a good idea. Also, you write here text messages and emails. Anything your spouse might text you, take a screenshot of it, keep a folder for all the emails so that you can prove the person, they might throw a few F bombs, talk disparaging, threaten you, and you could say, I believe my spouse was intoxicated when he or she wrote this.
Yeah, and I'll say, like, I know that it's difficult, like going through a divorce. I've been through a divorce. Like, I I I know you may not be thinking about these things right now, but anything and everything that you put in writing can and will be used against you. And so this is a good opportunity for that other spouse to address these issues in writing and hopefully have the other spouse respond and be like, yeah, you know what? I was really drunk. Like, I know I have a problem. I know I need to get help. And a lot of times that's what happens is that the other spouse acknowledges to some degree an issue, then it's in writing. And then it's like, okay, well, now again, I have something tangible outside of the court system.
Now, what about recording? Because I heard that you can't use in court anything that you record. So is that just a waste of time?
Well, for one, it's very dangerous. Usually, the first thing that happens is you pick up the phone and you start recording the person, right? And what naturally happens is the person goes to grab the phone and it turns into a domestic dispute, a
Mhm.
physical altercation. So I don't recommend people doing it. However, if you are going to, if you do have to record, it should be because you're recording because you're afraid for your life. And that is one of the exceptions to the eavesdropping statute. You can't record unless it's open and you've acknowledged that I'm recording, or if you're clearly recording and it's open and visual to the other person, that's another exception. So generally speaking, you can't record other people without their consent.
Okay. Now, the last thing you said that you could keep are photos of property damage or injuries resulting from your spouse's intoxication. So, does that mean like if they put their hand through a wall and now there's like a punch fist through the wall, take a picture of it. The picture's going to have the date on it. If you have, God forbid, an injury, have somebody take pictures of your injuries.
There's been pictures of bottles, beer bottles, wine bottles, alcohol bottles. I've had evidence used of physical abuse. I've had evidence of property damage, including walls, vehicles, damage to the garage, like cars being driven into the garage or smashing into the garage door. And I've also had where individuals have taken photos of the other spouse. Um, drunk, like passed out on a couch, on a bed, on a floor, something along those lines. So all of those things are things that can be photographed. Whether or not it can be used would be another issue. But I would say if you're safe and that you're not at risk or at in risk of any kind of harm by taking the photos, and I would recommend that you do all the things.
Better to have it even if you end up not being able to use it in the future. Just take pictures of everything. But I do want to reiterate what Tiffany just said. If you feel unsafe, you have to leave the premises with your kids and get out of there immediately and or call 911. It's not even, it's a no-brainer. It is not worth it to try to reason with the person. If you feel like you're in danger, please leave and or call 911.
Absolutely.
Okay, here's another thing I want to ask. You write here when, and let's say someone hires you, Tiffany, and then you do drug testing and it comes back positive. What are some common actions that a court will take?
If it comes back positive, the first thing that an attorney like myself, I would be asking the court to then supervise or restrict the parenting time. And until the other spouse was able to otherwise rehabilitate themselves and have other testing completed that shows that they are in fact clean, the parenting time would be restricted.
Okay, and then you also wrote maybe they would be required to complete a treatment or a rehabilitation program?
Yes. Now it gets, statutorily wise, whether or not a court system, a judge could order something like that, is debatable. A lot of times that does happen through agreements where the other spouse will say, look, I will agree to do this to show and to prove to the other spouse and to the judge that in fact they're willing to try to get help to facilitate the problem.
Okay, and then I think you brought this up earlier, requirements to prove sobriety during parenting time, which is you could use SoberLink, which is a wonderful tool where you tell your spouse you have to breathe into this, and if you and then you can see, you get um, it's extremely accurate. There's facial recognition technology, so nobody can fake it, and you get a report before you drop off the kids whether he or she is sober, which I think is so wonderful.
Yes, and I mean, I use it in my cases. I'm also appointed by judges to represent children as a guardian ad litem. And even in one of my cases right now, I have the wife is on SoberLink pursuant to my recommendations. I get the report. I get a weekly report, and I also get a monthly report.
I love that. It's just keeping kids safe, and it's a
Absolutely.
really, really good thing. Tiffany, thank you so much. I want to give you the last word. Tell me, what advice do you have for somebody divorcing an alcoholic that's hopeful? Are they going to be okay? What's the biggest piece of advice you can give?
The biggest thing I could say, and that I think a lot of people are wrong about is that they are afraid to leave the situation thinking that it would hurt the children to otherwise get divorced. Um, Unfortunately, that's it's not true. They don't realize how much children are at risk in marriages that are failing, especially with alcoholism involved. To get them out of that is just so very important. And I know that it's hard to look at it that way when you're inside of the box, but I tell clients, I'm on the outside. Right now, the kids are in a very, very bad spot. And they would be in a much healthier environment if they were outside of that. And I know that it's difficult to consider that at the moment, but that is the bigger picture. So, long story short, think about the kids. I know that it's difficult to think about dividing the household, but at the end of the day, you have to do what's best for yourself and for the family. And sometimes that means that divorce is the right route.
Yeah, because people think that they can protect their kids if they're there all the time, so they stay in the marriage. But what you're saying is so, so smart. You are 100% right. And I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much, Tiffany.
You are so welcome. Thank you for having me.
And if you want to reach Tiffany, her website is thughewslaw.com. You can also find Tiffany in the trusted professional section of Divorced Girl Smiling, which is divorcedgirlsmiling.com. Thanks so much for watching, everyone.